army could not enter, so most of the fight was outside. The Russian army, the convoy, was basically moving through this very road. I'll just step aside. This is the very road. Just a few meters down this road is where Irpin starts, and thereafter Bucha. But if you go on the other side is the capital city of Kiev. So we are right at the suburbs of the capital city of Kiev, and from this place the Russians had their initial plan of a blitzkrieg attack on Kiev. But what we witnessed today, Arnab, is a clear signs of genocide. We saw bodies lying on the road. There were bodies, their hands tied behind, point blank range that they were fired upon. And not just that, there were not a single house. All of us, we did not come across a single house that still remains intact. Almost every house, artillery fire that has taken place. We've seen bodies that were lying on the road itself. Just on the other side, or just take a look. This is just few meters away. This is a kind of a cafe, but kind of destruction that has taken place in a neighborhood like this. There are scores of houses. It's an emerging township that has been attacked, and this is what remains right now in a place as you just enter Irpin. And the images that we saw the moment we entered Irpin was absolutely shocking. There are multiple claims and counterclaims, but at least what we can tell you from what we have reported is that yes, there were bodies lying on the road. Yes, there is a mass graveyard that we spotted in a church premises in the city of Bucha. All of this unfolded before our eyes.
And there's no point denying that this has been a genocide that Putin cannot be forgiven for. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our Republic team in Bucha, Irpin, Kiev. And for tonight, let's start the debate. Let's start.
From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Arnab Goswami on the debate at 9. Presented by Amity University. Powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Ever Ready and Fujitsu General.
Good evening. Forget the strategic debates tonight. Forget the larger geopolitics at play tonight. Forget the grand strategy and the nuclear finger-wagging. Forget the debate about one bloc versus another bloc. Just forget about it. Just think instead. Think instead for a moment about the horrors of the war and think about the genocide at Bucha. Just 20 kilometers from Kiev, Bucha, where there has been a mass killing, a mass massacre of civilians by Russian forces. Bucha, where little children have been maimed and killed by Putin's forces. Bucha, where ordinary civilians had their hands tied and shot at in close range. Bucha, where inside a church there has been created a mass grave where the bodies of victims of the genocide have been dumped. Bucha, where the cities have been lined with dead bodies, all lying on the road. Bucha, where the bodies were found, some naked, some shot dead close range, and many charged. This is not grotesque alone. It's barbaric. And no, Russians, it's not fake news. It's not fake news, Russians. It's not fake news. If you are hearing anything to the contrary, that, Russians, is fake news. The genocide at Bucha has been enumerated and documented by innumerable journalists, including our very own from the Republic Media Network, who have seen the monstrosities perpetrated with their very own eyes and their cameras. So it's not fake news, Russians. The Russians need to answer. The Team Republic has reached Bucha as claims and counterclaims on the Bucha killings emerge. Was it a genocide? No doubt about it, in my view. Debate 1. Debate number 2 this evening. CRPF Jawan killed in terrorist attack in Srinagar's Mysuma, and we also had a Kashmiri Pandit targeted. That news came in about 20 minutes back. All-out operations. If not now, then when? Debate number 3 tonight. Shocking incident at the Gorakhnath temple in Gorakhpur, where a man tries to breach security with a sharp-edged weapon. Was it a terrorist plot? That's debate number 3, and here are the headlines. This Monday evening on the Debate Tonight.
These are graphic images, very disturbing, of bodies that have been dumped. A mass graveyard, as you can see, bodies are still lying right now.
Republic reaches the genocide side as we reveal the brutal truth about the mass graves of Bucha.
We can see the genocide of Ukrainian people just for this, that we are Ukrainians.
Ukrainian speaker tells Republic's Shawan Sen civilians were massacred in Bucha and dumped in body bags by the Russians.
Our children draw swooping rockets, not shooting stars. Over 400 children have been injured and 153 children died.
Zelensky rushes to Bucha, says the genocide makes the talks more difficult with Russia. Russia calls Ukraine claims of the massacre genocide at Bucha as fake. The visuals are telling us a different story. The Russians are in denial. CRPF attack Kashmiri Pandit targeted 2 big attacks in Kashmir. Time to go all out against terror again. And Yogi Adityanath rushes to Gorakhpur as horrific images of a possible terrorist attack emerge from the Gorakhnath mutt. Ladies and gentlemen, shocking visuals have emerged of what appears to have been deliberate killings and targeting of civilians in Bucha in Ukraine on the outskirts of Kiev. Russia claims it's all staged. Ukraine says it's a genocide. As claims and counterclaims fly thick, we sent our reporters on the ground to find out what the reality is. Republic's Shawan said, led the crew to ground zero to uncover the truth. Republic is in Bucha, and this is what we find out firsthand.
This mass graveyard in Bucha bears testimony to the brutal acts of the Russian troop. What you see, viewers, these are graphic images, very disturbing, of bodies that have been dumped. A mass graveyard, as you can see, bodies are still lying right now, put inside these body bags, and they have been dumped here. We are standing in the premise of a church right in the middle of Bucha, where we have seen reports earlier suggesting that bodies after bodies were being dumped inside these graveyards. We do not know the number of bodies that may have been dumped right now. This is exactly what Ukraine is now calling it, a genocide that has been committed by the Russian troops. What turns out right now, after the Russian troops have withdrawn, is these are images which tells you the horrors of the war that we are trying to document at this point in time. As we entered the city of Irpin and we go towards the very axis that has been used by the Russian troops, we see large-scale devastation. Cars that you see have been completely burnt down. People who were who were caught in the crossfire, their bodies have been lying on the road. Now that has been cleared by the forces right now. And this entire area, as you can see, I'll ask our video journalist Surendra Singh Rawat to just walk with me, and as I show you the kind of devastation after the battle that was raging, and it was only on Friday that the Russian troops left from this very area.
Президенти зазвичай не записують таких звернень, як це. Але сьогодні я повинен сказати саме так. Сказати після того, що відкрилося в Бучі та інших наших містах, звідки вигнали окупантів. Сотні вбитих людей, закатованих, розстріляних, мирних людей.
What you see right now on your screens is the reality, the truth of this war, where thousands and thousands of Ukrainians have lost their lives. But today, this image tells you that somewhere down the line, the Russian troops have crossed the line of war. There is, as many say back in India, there is of a war, but that seems to have been completely crossed by the Russian troops. Ukraine has now decided that they are going to take up this before the World Forum, and Russia needs to pay the price of the genocide that has been committed by them.
Те, що ми зараз бачимо в Ірпені, зараз бачимо в Бучі, це жахливі кадри. І, на жаль, ці кадри не з кіно, це реальність. Жахлива реальність, коли розстріляні люди, цивілісти.
Little did anyone realize that this is the image that one is going to see when the Russians really retreat. The answer to the question that many is asking is that have the Russians really forgotten the line that one cannot cross? Here you have bodies of children, bodies of women, elderly, all packed in a bag, and they've been dumped here. These are open graveyards that have been created, and this is right in the premise of a church. Let me just tell our video journalist Surendra Singh Rawat to just show you this graveyard has now been created in the premise of a church, and bodies have been dumped here.
In the center of Europe, we can see the genocide of Ukrainian people just for this, that we are Ukrainians. Sure, it's kind of Holocaust, it's kind of Holodomor, it's kind of other, but it's a genocide.
Bucha is concerned. Russia claims they've never actually fully held the city.
Recent fake attacks were witnessed in the city of Bucha in Kyiv Oblast after the withdrawal of the Russian troops, when our troops withdrew in line with plans and agreements previously reached. It was a stage and promoted now in the media by Ukraine and its Western mentors.
Seems like it's more realistic that these civilians and people with these white bands on were killed by Ukrainian forces when they came into these territories or after. But we're not psychics. I'm just showing you what I'm seeing from the footage that Ukraine is releasing.
The Russian government has released these counter videos to question Ukraine's claim.
Te krwawe masakry, których dopuszczają się Rosjanie, rosyjscy żołnierze zasługują na nazwanie ich po imieniu.
The European Union condemns in the strongest possible terms the reported atrocities committed by Russian occupation forces in a number of Ukrainian towns and cities such as Bucha and others.
Et je pense qu'on est tous extrêmement choqués et nous l'avons condamné avec la plus grande fermeté. Deuxièmement, il est clair qu'il y a des indices aujourd'hui très clair de crimes de guerre. C'est l'armée russe qui était.
In diesen Stunden erreichen uns furchtbare und grauenerregende Aufnahmen aus der Ukraine. Wir sehen Dutzende erschossene Zivilisten in Bucha, ein Gebiet nördlich von Kiew.
The world is condemning Russia.
Question is, will the Russian army really answer, or once again indulge in what they have been very good at, the psyops that we have seen when this war actually began?
I have General G.D. Bakshi with me from Delhi, Sergei Strokin from Moscow. He's a journalist and columnist for the Kommersant Publishing House. Alexander Bovdanov is a geopolitical analyst from Moscow. Johan Backman is a political scientist and human rights activist from Helsinki. And we also have with us from Kiev, Vadim Trukhin, former diplomat and head of the NGO European Movement Ukraine. And he's there, the top left of your screen. Peter Zalmayev of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative from Kiev. Charles Kupchan from Georgetown University. And he's joining us from Washington. And Professor David Des Roches is joining us from Washington, D.C. He's a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, and our senior associate editor leading the team reporting from, presently his location is Irpin. Just some time back he was in Bucha. And Shawan has led a team of 5 members of the Republic Media Network who have been extensively doing some detailed documentation, seeing the things for themselves. And the reason I have asked Shawan to join us on the program is so that nobody who supports the Russians makes the mistake of calling this fake news. We have seen this with our own very eyes, documented it with our own very cameras. And I'm proud to say today that the Republic Media Network has more reporters and presence on the ground documenting the horrors at Bucha than any other international media crew. So please, first of all, let us not dismiss it as fake news. Everyone watching the program in India knows Shawan Sen is one of the most respected investigative journalists from India. And he has seen this on the ground himself. Shawan, thanks for joining us. I want to begin with you, Shawan. If in about a minute, you can quickly tell us about what you saw and what you've documented. Shawan, to you first. Shawan reporting from the outskirts of Kiev in the Irpin area next to Bucha. Shawan.
Well, in fact, Arnab, it was about a 45-minute drive from the city center of capital of Kiev. We decided to enter Irpin. The first place, the moment we reached Irpin, is we saw tanks lying on the road. There were houses on both sides that were completely charred. Artillery fire that we saw, remains of an artillery fire. And the moment we entered Irpin, just like this, on the very street that we are standing right now, the bodies that were still lying, of course, that has now been covered by the Ukrainian army. And I can tell you that they were civilians by simply looking at the remains of the clothes. There are children who were there, and this was almost a stretch of about 1 to 2 kilometers before we exited Irpin, and then we entered Bucha. And the image, the moment we entered Bucha, was a long street, roughly about 2 to 3 kilometers, and the entire convoy of Russia's logistic supply. You have the light combat vehicles, armored tanks, and also the fuel tanks of the Russian army that was completely damaged. But what was even more shocking is when locals who were there, they guided us and they told us that we need to take a look at what's really happening. Not very far from that very place, barely few meters away, is a church where there is a mass grave, and that's where we spotted bodies being dumped. We did ask this question as to when did this take place. It was very clear that there were a lot of civilians who got caught in the crossfire. They could not exit at the right time, and that's the reason why they had to still take refuge in their own homes. There have been locals who have testified the fact that the moment Russian army actually reached there was indiscriminate firing that was taking place. A lot of people had to take refuge in their basements, but there have been Russian troops who have entered houses, pulled them outside, and they have been shot at point blank range. And that is the reason why there is a body that you would find on the road itself with their hands tied back. That is a clear indication that they were tortured before they were fired upon. And not just that, if you actually look at most
you've
parts
yourself
of the city,
seen, Shawan, like you were telling me before we came into this broadcast, that you've seen the mass grave yourself. You've seen the bodies with their hand tied yourself. I mean, you have documented it and seen this on your own.
Well, in fact, that was the report that we put out because we wanted to verify the location, first of all. There were already reports that were put out by the Ukrainian media about such mass genocide that has taken place. But we wanted to verify the moment we reached a church. Now, that's a large area, and we saw behind the church is where the grave is. And it would be roughly about, a long grave that has been carved out, and bodies were basically being dumped. And these bodies, which were not even covered, they were simply dumped one after the other. They were piled upon. Pretty much what we have seen, images coming in from the times of Holocaust, quite a rerun of that actually we've witnessed unfolding before our eyes.
Absolutely. Shawan, please stay on there. Thanks for verifying that for us. Sergei Strokan, have the Russians lost it completely? Have the Russian forces become desperate? Was this an act of vengeance? Because this was an area, Bucha, which was under Russian control and taken over back by the Ukrainians. This is one area which was one of the first towns to be captured by the Russian troops on 25th February. It's because of the resistance of the Ukrainians that Russians have had to retreat back. But you retreat back, your military retreats back. Why did the city have to be massacred, Sergei, by the Russian forces? Why massacre innocent civilians? Tie their hands behind their neck, burn them, put them in a mass grave. Why?
Can I answer? Look, the problem with dead bodies is that, the problem is with dead bodies that they can't tell you the truth. They will never tell you the truth. You simply see dead bodies, and then you enter into the question of interpretation. If you hate Russia, if you're involved in a blame game, you will believe that this was conducted by Russia. You can ask your so-called investigative reporter at the spot whether he's seen himself the act of killing by Russian forces. Ask him now. No, he will say no, because he doesn't have that evidence. What he sees.
No, 1 minute. First of all, a little more respect. Sergey, 1 minute. Sergey, 1 minute. Just 1 minute. You disagree with what our journalist says on the ground. 1 minute. There's a 1 minute, please. Please don't shout at me. Please don't shout at me, Sergey. I'm not shouting at you. I'm not shouting at you. Please don't shout at me. Let me respond to you. I'm only saying one thing. Sergey. Sergey, please calm down. Let me say one thing to you. Now, just because you do not like what my reporter says, does not mean that you call him a so-called investigative journalist. I didn't call you a so-called journalist because I disagree with some of your views. One, professional respect. Professional respect, please. Professional respect. He's on the ground. He's in Bucha. You're not. Sergey, you're in Moscow. My reporter's in Bucha. Sergey, you're in Moscow. My reporter is in Bucha.
Can I have answer to the question?
But what?
Yes.
No. I want a response, please. I'd like Vadim Trukin to come in, please. Vadim Trukin responding here. No, Sergey, 1 minute, please. Vadim.
No.
He says there is no proof that the Russians killed the Ukrainians there.
If I go to Pakistani embassy in Moscow, I will be flooded with materials how India is killing innocent civilians in Kashmir. But I will never believe
this is not material.
This is cheap propaganda. But
this is not material. My reporter is in Bucha, where there are bodies in a mass grave inside a church. Sergey, please show some sensitivity. I want Vadim to come in. I think you're being extremely insensitive.
You will see that this is completely staged, managed, with a lot of
I'd like Vadim to come in, please. Viewers, we are debating tonight. We are debating tonight the Bucha genocide, and no doubt this is a genocide in Bucha, whether people like it or not. I began by saying tonight, forget the geostrategies, just think about what's happened to the people there. Vadim Trukin, please. Vadim Trukin, please. There's no point attacking my reporter, please. Vadim.
If I may. Yes, thank you very much for launching this discussion. First of all, I think that the truth always win. The truth always win. I repeat it. This is first. Secondly, I appreciate very much the job which Indian journalists have done. They arrived exactly to the place where these crimes were committed. And this is very good that Indian public, Indian people, Indian country will see by its own eyes what is going on there. This is second. Third, if you remember, sir, approximately a month ago, I was also participating in some kind of debate on your TV, and I told at that time, please, do not invite Russians. Their brains are poisoned by the lies. They were living during many years under the angry propaganda, and they are not able to truthfully evaluate the situation. They are trying to protect the Putin, the bloody army, the bloody generals, and they are not able to be, impartial. This is very bad. When we include into the normal civilized debate people who are not
only argument. Because we don't have any other arguments.
Next.
Yeah, very good argument. Yeah. Totally falsified and stage managed with a lot of false details.
Who are guilty in those crimes into justice. And I am quite sure that President Zelensky, our Prosecutor General, our lawyers will work very closely with international justice, with international criminal court, and we will finally get all of these people, including Putin, first of all, Shoigu, Minister of Defense of Russia, Gerasimov, Chief of Staff of Russian so-called army, and all those colonels, generals, sergeants, and so on, who were giving orders to kill civilians. We think that this is an unprecedented event after Second World War, and these crimes cannot be left without response. Of course, now Putin, his propagandists, they propaganda as such, will do all their best in order to blame Ukraine. But now all normal people, all professional journalists see by their own eyes that Russian so-called army, this is not army by the way, this is a group of people who are murdering civilians, who are stolen things, who are damaging schools, kindergartens and so on. They are not army, they are just bandits, they are barbarians, like by the way was said in your reports from Bucha.
I think all I'm saying by them tonight, all I'm saying by them tonight, and I want to put this to Alexander Bovdunov, and I want Peter Zalmayev to come in. All I'm saying tonight is to the Russians, please do not call this fake news. Please do not stop listening. Please do not stop seeing. Please do not stop believing the truth. Allow me. Then if you can stop shouting, I'll tell you, Sergey. And unlike you, I will not shout in response, but I will tell you firmly, enough. Now you'll have to listen to me then. Sergey, you'll have to listen to me. What I will say will be uncomfortable for you, but you'll have to swallow it. I'll tell you something, you're getting touchy about it. You think the Ukrainian soldiers, you think the Russian soldiers are incapable of these monstrosities? You think the Russian soldiers are incapable of killing civilians? You made up your mind? Listen to me then. And please listen.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have evidence. I have evidence in body bags. I have evidence in a mass grave.
Show me.
I have just shown it. If you didn't want to see it, what can I do? I'll show you pictures of the mass grave. Body bags, black body bags.
Yes, mass grave.
4.5 feet deep.
Yes.
Nowhere to keep the bodies. Are you saying to me? Are you saying these are the? Do I need to show proof after this? I'm showing you the proof. Watch my television channel right now. Inside a church, desecrated. A church inside which there is a mass grave. For God's sake.
Yes.
Alexander Bovdunov, Alexander Bovdunov, may I please come in? Alexander, please. Alexander and Peter Zalmayev. Peter wants to say something first. Peter is saying something first. Alexander will respond.
Russians and blaming that them in genocide. We are in the midst of informational warfare, and everybody knows that nobody can be really neutral in this warfare because impression and analysis are formed by information flows. And you have your team in Irpin and Bucha, and understand. But your team shows only what the Ukrainian side showed them. For example, your team showed us the graveyard around the church. The problem is that this graveyard was created at 10 of March. And the people that are buried, there are people who were killed in crossfire, because this was the location of heavy fight between Russian and Ukrainian troops, and it was shelled first by Russians, then by Ukrainians. So yes, these people are victims of war. But when you are blaming only one side, you are taking this side in information warfare.
No. Alexander, if I may, and Shawan will counter you. I'll just say one thing, and Shawan will counter you. See, Shawan, I'm handing it over to you. Simple point. And Shawan can respond better to this. But please don't tell me crossfire, because during crossfire, you don't tie the hands of people who have been killed with white armbands, tie them behind their back and shoot them at close range. Alexander, Shawan can tell you more. Please, Shawan.
Means, do you know what armbands mean or not?
Let me also tell you, Alexander, first of all,
Shawan, go on, please. Shawan, go on.
Our idea of coming to Bucha was to verify. Our idea of coming to Bucha was to verify the claims that the Ukrainians were making. First of all, we were not brought by the Ukrainians. We independently arrived at that spot. We did ask the locals. We did not speak to the Ukrainian army to find out what's really happening on the ground. We spoke to the locals who have returned, who are trying to take whatever belongings that they could. It is they who told us that this is what has happened. Many people have lost their own people. They were searching for the bodies of their loved ones from that very grave. So if you actually tell me that it is the Ukrainians who are telling us what to do, that's absolutely incorrect. Unlike the Western media, we have done everything independently. We have reached the very spot. And let me also tell you, as far as Crossfire is concerned, there are several indications of what the Russian troops were actually doing in Irpin and Bucha. There was a point in time that the Ukrainian army was not in a position to even enter. So there is enough evidence to prove that these two places, Irpin and Bucha, was very much under their own control. It was the Russian troops who had these two cities under their own control.
Mr. Arnab.
Absolutely, Peter Zalmaier wants to respond. Peter.
Let me answer, please. Let me speak, please. You two Russian guys have already spoken. And you know what? The fact that they're saying all this just means that it stings the eyes. The truth stings the eyes. They don't want to recognize it because it's too hurtful. Because that would be to recognize that their whole country and their president, Vladimir Putin, are war criminals. And the entire world is seeing that this is a genocidal war waged by one guy who has co-opted his whole country in this ridiculous war that no one knows what the goal of it is. Let me ask after I finish, maybe my colleagues, our friends in Moscow, can respond what the goal of this special operation is. Vladimir Putin promised them it will last a few days. It's now 40 days. And what have we gotten? What is going on? Why are they killing Ukrainians and including Russian speakers and even some ethnic Russians? What for? I suspect, Mr. Arnab, that these colleagues of ours in Moscow will regret in a few years. They will see this tape and they will regret very much that they ever took part in this on the side of this genocidal maniac. Everyone has seen it. Human Rights Watch, people, let's not go far. Human Rights Watch is a very conservative human rights organization. They don't throw out things like genocide and war crimes. Very. They have criticized. They have been critical of Israel, for example. They have been very critical of Israel. They do not toe Washington's agenda, and they said there's clear evidence that war crimes have been committed. But you know what? It is like you said, epistemologically, it is impossible to argue with that side because they do not acknowledge facts. If you remember what Sergei Lavrov said a few weeks ago, he said that Russia never invaded Ukraine. So apparently Russia is not even in Ukraine. So these are all ghosts that are fighting there, right? These are not even Russians. Mr. Arnab, it is pointless to argue with these people. Take it from me. It is pointless. The world has seen it for what it is. It's investigating, and these folks will be brought to justice. Whether they die or not, if they live to see justice served or not, the court of history, the judgment of history will be harsh, will be damning, will be everlasting.
I want to, if I may, I want to present a little bit of proof on the ground tonight. Before I come to General Bakshi, I want to get Johan Bachman and Charles Kupchan also on the debate. And I'd like to get Professor David from Washington also on the debate. And if I may get some others also into the panel, I want to put some facts here. The first fact is we have evidence here, Professor David, that civilians were tied with white armbands that they were made to wear by the Russian troops. Their hands were tied behind their back and then they were shot at close range distance. The Russians are saying that the Ukrainians killed their own people. The Russians are basically saying the Ukrainians killed their own people. This seems to be the stand of the Russians so far. I'd like you to come in on this, Professor David. You've been hearing the debate so far.
Yeah, good question. First off, I don't think we should be too harsh on our Russian guests. I mean, look, they can't even say that this is a war. I'm in America. I can call the president names if I want to, but they can't even say it's a war. So, don't be too hard on them. The second issue is, normally if there, not every civilian killed on the battlefield is a war crime, but certainly when civilians are killed incidental to combat, you don't see people tied behind your back, with their hands tied behind their backs. I think what we have is prima facie evidence of war crimes. This is in keeping with the way that the Russian and Russian allied forces have waged war in Syria, in Chechnya. And quite frankly, it's completely understandable given we've seen a lack of discipline at the junior ranks of the Russian armed forces, which is reflected in poor maintenance, logistics, and just the humiliating military defeat. But other than that, bear in mind, there's a complex information operations going on out of Moscow. So I think I've said all that I need to say, and I'd rather cede the rest of my time to Shawan because he seems to have the real facts, and I think that the facts are, quite frankly, unanswerable.
Shawan. Absolutely. I think Shawan has been documenting a lot, Professor David. And in fact, I may tell you that Shawan has been he's reported live from at least 23 explosion sites. And there have been occasions, and Shawan can be on the screen, I'll speak over him, very proud of the work that he's done. When Shawan was in Odisha some time back, Shawan, can I have him on the screen, please? When Shawan was in Odisha some time back, and when he reported that the Ukrainian forces and the Russians were separated by a distance of 40 miles, and how Odisha, if it fell, would have huge strategic ramifications, the Russians then said that Shawan was doing great reporting. And today, when he moves his attention to what has happened in Bucha, then they are saying that he's doing reporting that's pro-Ukrainian. It's not. It's the truth. It's the truth. I spoke to Shawan some time back, and Shawan, you can tell them, there were the eyewitnesses, a 14-year-old who has escaped from Bucha, said that the Russian soldier who had killed his father in front of him, right, and he survived, right, not a single resident out there was spared. And there were Russian soldiers who had told the locals that they would cut them up. They told you can say that also. They told the eyewitnesses who we spoke to that they would cut them up. Shawan, you can share more, maybe directly to our Russian panelists tonight.
Just one more. There was one more lady, Irina, about 84-year-old. She had just returned because all this while she could not enter the city of Irpin. She lost her 24-year-old son. Unfortunately, she was unconsolable. It was difficult for us to get her on camera, and perhaps it would have been very insensitive. But let me just quickly tell our Russian friends here that the fact of the matter is that here is a lady who says that her son, who did not want to leave the home, was taken out, dragged outside the house, was fired upon, and the body was left on the road. She later on actually buried the body inside the very compound, inside her very house. The fact of the matter is that there is not a single house which has not been plundered. There is not a single shop here in Irpin or Bucha that has not been broken open, and they've gone inside and they've looted. There have been evidence to that effect. And let's be very clear that the Russians found it very difficult to cross the borders of Irpin, and that's the reason why their logistics is in complete shambles, and there is evidence to that effect.
And one more point here. They say it's not a genocide. General Bakshi, a man is found with a noose around his neck inside a manhole. A civilian, Ukrainian civilian, bare-chested, bloodied, with a noose around his neck, stuck inside a manhole. The body could not have walked there. Another body found in a fetal position, another body found on a bicycle. On a bicycle. Third, bodies strewn across the street, spine-chilling, Charles Kupchan, spine-chilling, in one single still picture, 6 bodies lying dead, decomposing. Ukrainians shrouding and removing dead bodies from the streets. Many of them, General Bakshi, with broken fingernails, which means third-degree torture inflicted on the civilians before shooting them. I cannot believe that these are Ukrainians who started killing Ukrainians. It's unbelievable. Something else. General Bakshi.
Arnab, I am a soldier with 37 years of combat experience under my belt, right? We took part in the Bangladesh Liberation War. And believe you me, Arnab, we've seen worse. but it still shocks you when it hits you in the gut. Okay, I go along with my American friend when he says, and I am being objective as a soldier, right? There are times when even we have lost our marbles when you see such slaughter and killings. But then, this is a war zone, Arnab. This is not a picnic site. Tank battles, air bombardment, rockets, missiles, everything has been hitting here. So the corpses will be there. The corpses will be there. I'm talking as a soldier. But when I see people tied with their hands behind their back, and if there is a single bullet to your head, that's different. You see, I can fully understand if a Russian says that, look, we had tank battles here. Look, we had artillery, we had multi-barrel rocket launchers firing away, blazing away here. We had fighter bombers bombing. You know, we had artillery from both sides. And then weapons had been issued to civilians. Weapons had been issued to civilians. So therefore, you know, it is difficult to distinguish who's shooting at you, a civilian or a soldier. Well, then you will have civilian casualties. In war, we have had to, you know, just throw petrol on bodies and burn them because there is no time. There is no time. You are fighting for your own miserable, bloody life. All I can say is, Arnab, as a soldier, I can make an appeal to both sides. Look, this must end. For God damn it, this must end. This has gone on too long.
Absolutely.
This is now getting very, very dangerous. There could be accidental escalation. There could be a nuclear threshold cross. May I remind you, World War I and World War II started in Europe. We don't want a third world war, and we don't want a nuclear war to start in Europe. For God's sake, stop it to all sides. As a simple soldier, for God's sake, let's not see the death of women and children and the old and the
we carry the sentiment. We share the sentiment, but Charles,
stop it.
We share the sentiment, but Charles,
it's gone on for long enough. I know what it means as a soldier.
I agree. No, I agree with you. We are in the same page. My question is this going to be a flashpoint or a moment of realization? Charles Kupchan.
First of all, Arnab, let me just say thank you for reporting the facts and for putting this message out and for speaking about what's occurring on the ground in Ukraine with moral clarity. It's important to get the message out. And I think that the general just made a very important point. Civilians do die in war. It happens. This is not collateral damage. This is deliberate, self-conscious genocide. We are seeing body bags, people shot in the head, their arms tied behind their backs. This is a new level of Russian aggression. But I have to say, we already knew that this kind of aggression was taking place. We've seen for the last 4 or 5 weeks pictures of Russian bombs, Russian missiles crashing into apartment buildings. We've seen theaters housing children and women bombed. We've seen people that are fleeing out of one city across a bridge killed by artillery. So yes, this is a new escalation, a new level of moral outrage, but it really is a continuation of what we have seen before. And it reinforces the message that the general just gave. This has to come to an end. We need to find a way to stop this. The international community needs to speak up with moral clarity to tell the Russians it's enough.
Can I talk, please?
Sergey, those killed in those graves are Ukrainians. One minute. Vadim wants to say something before that. Yeah, Vadim, yes.
I just want to pick up the last idea which was said by our friend from Washington. We have to say stop to Russia. Come on, people. We are adults. We understand everything. Nobody can stop Russia by saying something. Russia can be stopped only by two things. By force, military force, and by economical pressure. That's it. No any other option, believe me. only strength can influence on Russia, Russian people and Russian, I don't want to use even this word like leadership, but those people who are now rulers of this country. Only strength, only force. So what I would call on all our partners, please, this is not time to ask questions whether there was genocide or not, whether Russia is bad guy or good, whether this is aggression or not. All this, we have all the answers to these questions. Russia is aggressor. Russia is Nazi terrorist state. Putin and his, this bandit company are war criminals. That's it. Everything what Ukraine needs, like President said, weapons, weapons, and weapons, but also unity of the international community. I appreciate very much Indian position. I
just want to show you one picture, Vadim. I want to show you one picture, if I may. I just want to show you one picture of people with their bodies with their hand tied behind their back. Viewers, if I can show that picture, please. I advise viewer discretion. These are all disturbing visuals, but I'm telling you, unless we actually show what's happening, we will not be able to convey what's happening. And this is a body I'm just showing. It's still morphed, hands tied behind the back. You can see it there, ladies and gentlemen. These people have been massacred. These are all bodies with their hands tied behind their back. Please, do not dehumanize even our analysis tonight. Sergey, you see this. Now I'm taking, you saw that.
Please? Yeah.
These Ukrainians have not tied their hands behind their back, gone to a Ukrainian soldier and said, shoot me at close range.
Made in Russia, then you are involved in a propaganda war. I recommend you as a professional, please, when the dust settles, watch that 8-minute footage which was showed by Ukrainian side and see how many false details as a professional, and you will be ashamed of your coverage today. Really.
Well, let me tell you, as one professional, hopefully to another. And I'm telling you this, there are so many visuals of ordinary Ukrainian civilians shrouding bodies and moving them. Dead bodies with broken nails. You are just not willing to see, Sergey. Sergey, you are not willing to see. Sergey, you're not willing to see. There's been a mass killing in a backyard compound, people with their hands tied behind their back. You're not willing to see. I just want to tell you, Charles, to what you said, I've disagreed with you on so many times, but I've realized in my profession, these are pictures not taken by the Ukrainians, these are pictures taken by an Indian crew, for God's sake.
Absolutely.
For God's sake, an Indian crew.
This is the bodies. Who killed these people?
An Indian crew.
You have seen it.
And I'll only say one thing. I will only say one thing here. You need to open your mind. Please understand, your soldiers were in retreat. Introspect. Don't be blind. Don't be blinded by anything. Don't be blinded. Don't be blinded. Don't believe the Kremlin is always right. Don't believe the Kremlin is always right. Don't believe the rest of the world is always wrong. And I request you, everyone, viewers, morally we have to be on the same page. Strategically we may disagree. Strategically I have many differences with the Americans. But morally we must stand for what is morally right. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for this debate. And on the other side, there have been many incidents, 2 big incidents in Kashmir today. One in which a Kashmiri Pandit was targeted, one in which the CRPF was targeted. I've been saying for a long time, why don't we go all out? I say tonight as well, why don't we? Will we ever go all out like we need to remove terrorism in Kashmir?